Ready for a deep dive?
Always.
Okay, good, because today we are diving deep
Very good.
into the Cricket Wars
Yes.
from Douglas Adams' life, the universe, and everything.
Of course, of course.
Which, if you've been following along with our deep dives, is part of
The Hitchhiker's Guide?
the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about any old intergalactic conflict here.
No, no, no.
The Cricket Wars, well, they get pretty deep.
There's something else.
Yeah.
We're talking about a civilization that decided the best way to deal with existential dread was to just, well, wipe out the entire universe.
Seriously, a whole war to unmake the universe. Classic Adams.
Yeah, peak Adams, for sure.
So we've got our excerpts right here from the book, but where do we even begin? I mean, what even is a cricketer?
Well, they start out, believe it or not, as rather peaceful, almost idyllic.
Idyllic. How do you go from idyllic to wanting to obliterate everything?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Picture this. A planet completely shrouded in a dust cloud, its inhabitants utterly unaware of anything beyond their own atmosphere.
So no starry nights for the cricketers, no sense of wonder about what's out there.
None whatsoever. It's like they're living in a cosmic safe space completely cut off from the vastness of the universe.
Talk about a limited perspective. It'd be like, I don't know, living your entire life in a windowless room.
Precisely. And for the longest time, they were perfectly content in that room, so to speak. They built a peaceful society, almost utopian, really.
Okay, I'm getting serious Pleasantville vibes here.
Right, but then everything changes. One day, a spaceship crash lands on Cricket, and their entire worldview shatters.
Now, knowing Adams, this isn't just any old spaceship, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. It's this hilarious hodgepodge of faulty technology, prone to disappearing and reappearing at random. The infinite improbability drive even makes a cameo appearance.
Of course it does. It wouldn't be a Hitchhiker's story without a little improbability drive chaos.
Exactly. But for the cricketers, this isn't just a random encounter. It's a cosmic curveball. It's like finding out that everything you thought you knew about reality was wrong, that your cozy little existence was just a tiny speck in an unimaginably vast and indifferent universe.
Yeah, that would definitely put a damper on things. You spend your whole life thinking you've got it all figured out, and boom, the universe throws you a curveball.
And not just any curveball, a cosmic one.
So how do the cricketers handle this sudden existential crisis? Do they embrace the mystery? Do they set out to explore the wonders of the cosmos?
Not quite. You see, the cricketers weren't exactly known for their, shall we say, flexibility.
Let me guess. They decided if the universe didn't fit into their worldview, they would just get rid of it.
Exactly. Instead of embracing the unknown, they declared war on it.
Talk about an overreaction. I mean, come on, it's just a bigger universe than you thought, right? You need to get all, right.
Well, that's the cricketers for you. They weren't exactly known for their nuanced approach to problem solving. And you have to admit, there's a certain, albeit darkly comedic, logic to their thinking.
Okay, I'll bite. How does wiping out the entire universe solve anything?
Think about it from their perspective. The universe, in all its vastness and complexity, has suddenly become this terrifying, unknowable thing. It represents everything they fear, everything they can't control.
Okay, but...
So their solution, get rid of it. Erase the source of their fear, even if it means destroying everything. It's an extreme reaction, to be sure, but Adams uses this absurdity to touch on a very human fear, the fear of the unknown, of things we can't control.
Okay, I get it, but still, these guys go from zero to universe ending in record time. How do they even manage to wage war on, everything?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? One minute they're this peaceful, technologically isolated people, the next they're churning out warships, and, well, this is where it gets really interesting. Killer robots.
Killer robots. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Oh, but these aren't your average run-of-the-mill killer robots. These robots are, well...
They're what?
They're terrifyingly polite.
Polite? Did you say polite killer robots?
Oh, yes. Imagine, if you will, a sleek, white cricket robot armed to the teeth approaching its target. It pauses, tilts its head, and says in a calm, almost apologetic voice, "Terribly sorry, old chap, but I'm going to have to atomize you now." Dreadfully awkward, I know.
And then poof, no more planet.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's this bizarre contrast that makes Adams so brilliant. He's forcing us to confront the horror of what the cricketers are doing, but he's doing it through this lens of humor and the unexpected. It's unsettling, hilarious, and thought-provoking all at the same time.
So we've got the cricketers, fresh off their existential crisis, deciding the only logical solution is to destroy the entire universe. And they've got these very polite killer robots to do their bidding.
They're very polite and very efficient killer robots, I should add.
Right. But they weren't always efficient, were they? I mean, there was that one time with the towel.
Ah, yes, the towel. We can't forget about the towel.
The towel. The most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have.
So useful, it even comes in handy during a universe-ending war. Who would have thought?
Speaking of which, what happened next? Did anyone stand a chance against these robots and their impeccable manners? Well, you'd think an army of polite killer robots would be unstoppable, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, we're talking about beings who are literally willing to die to unmake the universe, courtesy of said robots.
Talk about commitment. But as you hinted, it wasn't always a clean sweep for the Cricket robots, was it?
No, not always. Even the most meticulously programmed killing machine can have its off day. And in this case, that off day involved, of all things, a towel.
Of course. I should have known. Never underestimate the power of a good towel, especially when you're facing down a cosmic crisis.
It's right there in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, isn't it? A towel, it says, is about the most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have.
And in this case, it proves to be pretty darn useful for saving the universe from a bunch of robots with a serious case of the cosmic blues.
It's one of those details that makes you love Douglas Adams, you know?
Yeah.
He takes something so ordinary, so mundane, and turns it into this symbol of hope and resilience.
So how does a towel save the day against a well-mannered robot apocalypse? Spill the tea.
Well, I don't want to give too much away for those who haven't had the pleasure of reading the book yet.
Right. No spoilers.
But let's just say that Arthur's trusty towel comes in handy in the most unexpected way. It throws a wrench in the Cricket robot's plans, reminds everyone that even in the midst of galactic war, a little bit of practicality and, dare I say, absurdity can go a long way.
Classic Adam.
Exactly. But towel-wielding heroes aside, the Cricket Wars were no laughing matter. This wasn't just some minor intergalactic squabble. This was a full-blown existential crisis, with the fate of the universe hanging in the balance.
So how do you stop a civilization hell-bent on erasing everything? Ask nicely.
Well, there were attempts, heroic even. But against a force so utterly committed to destruction, it was an uphill battle, to say the least.
But they did eventually find a way to stop the cricketers. So.
They did. The Cricket Wars eventually came to an end. The robots were deactivated. The warships were grounded. But that wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot.
What do you mean? If the war is over, the robots are deactivated. What else is there?
The cricketers themselves. You can take away their weapons, but you can't just erase their ideology, their deep-seated hatred for the universe that had so rudely intruded upon their peaceful existence.
So what happened to them? Did they all just go to therapy?
Not quite. They were put on trial, of course, for, well, attempted universal annihilation. And who better to preside over such a trial than the galaxy's most, shall we say, unconventional judge?
Judiciary peg.
The one and only. A being of seemingly limitless leisure and questionable judicial competence.
He doesn't exactly scream defender of justice, does he?
No, not exactly. But that's the beauty of Pag. Beneath that facade of laziness and self-indulgence, there's a sharp mind at work. He sees the cricketers not just as villains, but as products of their environment. Beings trapped by their own limited perspective, unable to cope with the sheer scale and indifference of the universe.
So he actually tries to understand them.
He does. He recognizes their fear, their need for control, in a universe that often seems determined to remind us just how small and insignificant we are. And in doing so, he stumbles upon a solution. Unconventional, of course, but a solution nonetheless.
I am both intrigued and slightly terrified to hear what this solution might be.
Well, it involved a very special box, a very long sentence, and a whole lot of absurdity. But that's a story for another time.
You're killing me. All right, fine, but you promise we'll come back to Judiciary Pag and his unique brand of justice.
I promise. But for now, let's talk about something a little more festive. Because while the cricketers are busy being sentenced to an eternity of, well, we'll get to that, there's a party going on. A big one.
Oh, we're talking about that party.
The one and only. A party so legendary, so utterly off the chain, that it makes even the most epic cosmic battles seem tame in comparison.
This is the part where Adams throws a never-ending, universe-shaking rager in the middle of all this existential dread, isn't it?
I know it. And it's not just a random throwaway detail. This party, for all its chaos and absurdity, actually serves a very specific purpose in the story. It's a counterpoint to the cricketers' rigidity, their need for control. It's a celebration of the unpredictable, the uncontrollable nature of, well, everything.
So while the cricketers are busy trying to unmake the universe, everyone else is just partying like there's no tomorrow.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But it's more than just hedonism, more than just mindless revelry. It's a way of saying, yes, the universe is a chaotic, unpredictable place. But that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's something to be celebrated.
I think I need to find myself an invitation to this party. Sounds much more fun than, existential dread and robot overlords.
Right. But here's where things get really interesting. We find out that the cricketers' hatred for the universe, their desire to wipe the slate clean, it wasn't entirely their own doing. There's a puppet master behind the scenes, a being of pure logic who decided to run a little experiment. His name, Hactor.
Hactor. Now there's a name that sends chills down your spine.
Hactor was no ordinary supercomputer. He saw the universe not as this wondrous chaotic tapestry, but as a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced.
And his solution was to, what, orchestrate a galactic war to see if the universe was worth saving?
Pretty much. He manipulates the cricketers using their fear and their isolation to create the perfect weapon, the perfect tool for his grand experiment.
Talk about a god complex, but it makes you think, doesn't it? Are we really masters of our own destiny, or are we just pawns in some cosmic game, dancing to the tune of some unseen force?
It's a question that has haunted humanity since the dawn of time. Free will versus determinism. Do we have control over our own lives, or are we just puppets on a string acting out a script that's already been written?
And where does Ford Prefect fit into all of this? Last we left him, he was being Ford Prefect.
Ah, yes. Ford. Never one to be left out of a good cosmic crisis. But even Ford, with his infinite improbability and his uncanny ability to always be in the wrong place at the right time, even he struggles to make sense of it all, which I think is kind of the point, isn't it?
So we've got puppet masters, parties, and poor Ford trying to wrap his head around it all.
It's a lot, I know.
It really is.
But it's interesting you mentioned Ford struggling to make sense of things, because there's another character who embodies that struggle even more so.
You're talking about Agrajag, the unfortunate soul who keeps getting accidentally killed by Arthur.
The very same.
Okay, talk about being stuck in a loop. Every time he's reborn, he's convinced Arthur's out to get him, which just leads to, well, more accidental death.
It's both tragic and hilarious, isn't it? This poor guy, completely unable to see the bigger picture, fixated on this one seemingly insignificant being who just happens to be at the center of all these cosmic coincidences.
It's like that butterfly effect on a galactic scale.
Precisely. And, in a way, Agrajag isn't so different from the cricketers, is he?
How so? I mean, one's a vengeful ghost, and the other is a whole civilization of universe haters.
True, true. But they're both driven by the same thing. This inability to cope with the sheer randomness of the universe. They're both looking for someone or something to blame, a target for their fear and frustration.
So what's the answer? I mean, how do you deal with a universe that seems determined to throw cosmic curveballs at you at every turn?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do we fight it? Do we try to impose order on the chaos? Or do we embrace the absurdity, learn to laugh at the cosmic joke?
Sounds like Douglas Adams is giving us a lot to chew on here.
He always does. But amidst all this talk of universal destruction and existential crises, there's also this thread of, well, of hope, wouldn't you say?
Hope. Where are you seeing hope in all of this?
The party, remember? That never-ending, universe-shaking celebration that seems to be happening in the background of all this cosmic drama.
Oh, right, the party.
That party, for all its chaos and excess, represents something really important, I think. It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, even when it seems like the universe itself is out to get you, there's still room for joy, for connection, for celebrating the simple fact that we exist at all.
It's like instead of trying to control the universe, they're just rolling with the punches, enjoying the ride.
Exactly. They're not trying to make sense of the chaos. They're embracing it.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's a lesson we can all take to heart.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Cricket Wars, I have to ask, what's the takeaway? What do we do with all of this?
Well, if there's one thing I think Douglas Adams wants us to remember, it's this. Don't panic.
Solid advice.
Right. The universe is a vast, strange, often terrifying place. But it's also full of wonder, of humor, of endless possibilities. So grab your towel, embrace the absurdity, and remember, it's all a bit ridiculous anyway.
Words to live by. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep your towels handy and your minds open.
Always a pleasure.
And remember,
Don't panic.
Yeah.